So hey anime fans. The series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Ben 10. So let's start the series. Nami no Naruto's life in Hyde Ninja Village has been excruciatingly miserable because the ailing third headmaster locked the Yang chakra of the 9 beasts, no Yuko in him. Not only was that terrible, but his father, who had delivered him, never paid any attention to him. Instead, they were entirely preoccupied with his identical sister, the alleged hero of the story, who possessed an equal amount of chakra to her parents. He was left in the dark like a blank piece of paper, and she was able to finish anything they gave her. His parents repeatedly turned him down when he asked them to teach him the fundamentals of sealing. According to his father, "No, Naruto, sealing is dangerous for you. Why don't you help your sister when she finishes her new skill?" Her mother claims that, due to the attention she was getting from their parents, godfather legendary Sanin, and godbrother 6 headmaster, his sister was acting like a bitch about the entire situation. This was on top of the village's widespread mistreatment of him, vilification of him, and planning of mob attacks. When everyone else left for their 7th birthday, legendary Sanin was left alone in the house. He went to practice in the forest of death as he had nothing else to do. In the hopes that something good might happen in his life again, he wished himself a happy birthday. Naruto sat under a tree, dressed in brown shorts, a blue shirt, and an orange-sleeved hoodie over his head. He saw a shooting star in the sky, and became wary of the hits he was taking to the tree. He closed his eyes and thought, "I wish I had the power to leave this place on my own, and have a comfortable life." When he opened them, he saw a shooting star heading straight toward his area. The star created a crater behind him, and he had to move fast to avoid being hit. Intrigued, Naruto proceeded to investigate a cylindrical object that was emitting smoke due to the immense heat that had built up within the crater. The cylinder reached out as though to shield something as he got closer, and he was really taken aback by what he discovered. Inside the apparatus was a device that resembled a wristwatch, and had a square face plate that was colored green and white. The faceplate is black with 2 green stripes that delineate the hieroglyphs. Naruto, the 4th headmaster, was aware of when to remain composed in these situations, so he reached for the item with his left hand, and was taken aback when it adhered to his wrist. He gazed at his wristwatch and squeezed the two together when he noticed what appeared to be dials. A picture of different animals appeared as a playlist for him to select. A hologram he knows what it is emerged as he was going to go over the possibilities, displaying a small gray creature with big green eyes and a mustache-like face. When Naruto was recognized by the ancient clever beast, he was shocked. Naruto was enthralled with what had just happened, but he knew he had to return home because someone had witnessed the collision scene. He did not know that his request had been quietly granted. 2 years in front. 2 years ago, Naruto, then 7 years old, found the Omnitrix in the forest of death. With the help of Grey Matter, an alien from Asmuth's clan, he was able to unlock the Omnitrix's master control after a year of honing his forms. In the last year, he thought he was still too weak to battle alone, and he managed to defeat 8 of the 15 species. Now he can transform at any time into any of the 15 species. Despite leaving streaks behind, Chitrax, Ultimate Alien, Fast Track, was his favorite of the several species he retained because of its strength and speed. Valhalla, Wrath, a 9-foot-tall orange and white bipedal tiger with 1 claw out of each wrist and no tail, was his second favorite. But that was not all. He was fairly muscular and, like most animals, had improved senses. He spoke in an unusual manner. His other favorites were Elevation, Upgrade, Ordnance, Forearms, Siberian, Big Chill, and Hotspot, Heat Blast. Finally, Maxilla, Ripjaws, was his least favorite since she needed water. Today, the first day of yet another year of Naruto's life, he stepped out of his room wearing black baggy pants, orange sneakers, and an orange short-sleeved shirt. He heard his sister's party being thrown and scowled as he went down the stairs. "Happy birthday, Nami," his father exclaimed. "You're 9 years old today," his father told him. Naruto waited patiently, leaning on the stair rail, expecting someone to notice him, but he knew that would not happen. He observed as they started giving him his twin gifts. Even the clan heads and their children were present to celebrate their own or his sister's birthdays, and his god brother added, "And I think it's time to see what we got you." Legendary Sanin stated, "Okay, I think it's time for my present," making hand gestures and imagining a scroll materialize on his hand. The legendary Sanin just dismissed the worries of his students, and handed the scroll to a giddy Nami, who signed it hastily and carelessly in her father's name. "Isn't she a little young to be signing the summoning scroll?" asked Naruto Papa, bewildered but delighted. "I'm so proud," said Naruto's mother after her daughter signed the contract. Josa Akamichi caught everyone's attention when she said, "Before you know it, she'll be stronger than her old man," but Naruto Papa ignored her enthusiastic tone. He addressed the startled audience, which fell silent in reaction once he saw that everyone's attention was on Naruto Dad. "I would want to announce the ascension of my daughter as rightful clan heir to the clan. She has earned that responsibility, and I hope she doesn't abuse it," he remarked. "Can I have your attention please?" Clap, clap. Everyone turned to applaud the long-forgotten child when the announcement came from the stairs. Some were annoyed or indifferent, while others felt awful since they had forgotten him on his birthday. "Bravo, Sama, bravo," was Naruto's refrain as he cheered. "Naruto?" exclaimed Naruto's mother, who was shocked to realize she had forgotten about her kid. Naruto said, "You know, I was wondering when you were finally going to pull this stunt. Some part of me prayed that it wouldn't happen, but after the events just witnessed." As he lowered the steps to the entrance with his hands in his pockets. Nami, dressed as a small Naruto mother in blue slacks, an orange long-sleeved blouse, and blue shinobi shoes, exclaimed, "What the heck, Naruto? Can't you see you're ruining my party?" "Ino, a little girl with beautiful blue eyes and blonde hair, replied, "You loser, leave us alone." And it did hurt a little. After his parents left him at the ramen stand when he was 4 years old, Ino became his only buddy in the hamlet. He ignored her and continued, even though insulting him made her sad. Like his parents, she had abandoned him for his sister. It wasn't until he told her that she knew his family. Naruto slammed the door and rushed to the door, grabbing the doorknob. "Oh, I don't intend on staying," he muttered. He continued, "If this is how this family is going to be all the time, then I'm glad I was just expelled from the clan." With the shocking relatives. Slap. Naruto Papa held it in place while his wife smacked his crimson cheeks and gave him a purple-eyed stare. "I thought I told you not to go through with it," cried Naruto's mother, furious at her husband's behavior. Naruto Dad shivered at his wife's shout, but Naruto Mom, like Naruto, she slammed the door of her home and left a stunned audience behind. Without even waiting for an answer, she said, "Don't you but NRDO mommy. When NRDO gets home, you will retract the ascension of my understanding." Everyone was drawn to Nami's exclamation, "Cake," and was grateful for the diversion. Alongside Naruto. Naruto rapidly rolled to reveal the Omnitrix on his wrist, after confirming that he was invisible. He hit a faceplate after choosing the species he wanted, but in a burst of green light, Naruto was replaced by something else. According to the list of alien species Asmia sent him on his 8th birthday, the alien appears to be a semi-armored velociraptor. He wears a helmet with a visor to hide the rest of his head, which consists of a blue face, green eyes, black lips, and a tail with 5 blue stripes. He also has black balls on his feet. The monster blinked and looked at himself. "Not what I was going for, but it does have about the same ability as Shitrax," he said. He muttered, "Sweet," and then abruptly accelerated as he rushed from the area to his target. He instantly formed a ready position and covered his face with the helmet, stating, "I think I'll call this one, Rush." Following a brief run. Naruto was startled to discover 2 scrolls and a completely sheathed sword in front of him, while he was in the forest of death in his human form. The guard was designed like a 4-pointed star, and the sword's grip was blue and white. The blade vibrated on his hand as he lifted it up, as though it was loving his touch. He tossed it over his shoulder and started to study the 2 scrolls. The first was a scroll about a specific type of Thai spirit art called the Genken. "Thank you, Guy and Lee." He could only guess the origin of this and placed the scroll into his pocket. Then he studied the second scroll, meant for those who were new to Ken spirit art, and wrote something at the bottom. "Happy birthday from Yugao, Lee, and Guy." Although he was relieved that at least some people remembered his birthday, he was heartbroken to realize that he would have to say goodbye to them. He placed the scroll in his other pocket. He chose to go to a certain spot of the forest to start honing his taste-spirit art skills until morning, when he realized he would have to go, after waking up and realizing it was still light. In addition to Naruto Mom. She felt bad when she found out that once Naruto was 2 years old, they had decided not to celebrate his birthday with Nami's. She was happy to be a good mother and to follow the family rule, even though she knew her grandfather would be embarrassed by what she had done. She now understands that she wouldn't have believed her best friend's criticism of her treatment of her, if it hadn't been sincere. Determined to be there for her child, she got out of bed and walked into the room to make a big bowl of ramen for everyone. In addition to Naruto Papa. If he wants his children to be the 9 beasts, not Yuko's 10 beasts, to defend the community, don't be critical of him. He knew that he was alienating his son, but based on the details, he and Legendary Sanin knew that his daughter was the child of the prophecy. Something had to be done for the tribe's benefit. Being the cage of a village and having a family meant that one had to decide between the community and the family. The Great Toad Sage said to Legendary Sanin one day, "You will take on a student. This student will become the harbinger of a great revolution in the world of the ninja. They will finally bring peace to the world, or utterly destroy it. That's the outcome of their revolution." Although Naruto only had the chakra of the yang of the 9 beasts, his father was convinced that his daughter was the prophecy kid because she had the ancestry, the chakra, and the strength to support it. As he looked at his family portrait, Legendary Sanin thought it was justified to spend $1,000 to save $1 million, because he was aware that his daughter would have to be given priority if the prophecy came to pass. He scowled, trying to remember whether he had made the correct decision with his kid, but his thoughts were cut short when Naruto Mom slammed the door of his desk. He looked at her irate husband. She pointed to the letter in front of them and said, "Read." He accepted it and flipped the pages. As said by Sama. I felt it would be foolish to remain in a community that doesn't want you when the fourth headmaster, in all his glory, chose to expel me from the clan. Nami would always be the object of your affection. Whatever you do, I will never again be with a family that would put the good of the community before their own. To find a family that won't let me take advantage of them for my own benefit, I'm relocating out of town. I'll prove to the world that an old toad's views shouldn't guide legislation. Since I am a civilian without a clan, the headmaster will need to break a number of regulations before he can send me back to the village. Keep in mind that I would fight if you came for me. I wonder whether Sama would send additional hunting ninjas from the bingo book along with your own ex-son. From Naruto, unnamed. In amazement, Naruto Papa dropped the piece of paper. Even if he attempted to plead his way back into the family, he felt that this was too much and that his child would be outraged. He turned to his wife, who was about to cry, and made a finger motion to his personal guards. Abu. Emi Haddock 6 headmaster, I want him in my office yesterday, he said, glancing quickly at the 4 Anbu soldiers huddled in front of the headmag. Hi Headmaster Sama, murmured the Anbu captain, and they left in quiet. Shortly after, the 6th headmaster appeared reading an orange book written by legendary Sanin called Icha Icha, or Come Come Paradise. He greeted his sensei coldly. Yo? After complaining about his students' mischievous behavior, Naruto Papa handed him the letter. When he first read it, the 6th headmaster was confused, but as he read further, he was amazed by what he saw. He gave Naruto Papa a serious look. He asked the headmaster nicely, what do you need me to do? Naruto Papa gave the command, track his scent, while these Anbu follow and bring him back alive. If you have any difficulties, call me, before getting to his feet and turning to confront his irate wife. After leaving his office, his student told the Anbu guard to meet him at the gate in 10 minutes, adding, but I don't expect you to have any since he practically is a civilian. Alongside Naruto was wearing a black long-sleeve shirt, an orange short-sleeve jacket with a hood on the upper chest, and black slacks with red stripes, extending from the side of his hips to his feet, where he was wearing dark red sneakers. His soul village pals had sent him 2 scrolls and a sword for his birthday, and he carried them in an orange rucksack on his back. Naruto heard a voice as he prepared to cross the Nami no Kuni barrier and head toward the harbor. No one was catching up to him as he ran as fast as he could see. Naruto, you are here directed to stop what you're doing and head home. Naruto noticed an Anbu agent obstructing his route as he turned to face the caller. Shit, he exclaimed. Then he turned to the other 3 Anbu, lamented his misfortune, and pulled down the sleeve of his left arm to display an activated Omnitrix. A burst of green revealed a humanoid, moth-like monster in place of Naruto. With wings and antennae that folded into a hooded robe, he looked like a phantom. He selected the desired alien, then pushed the dial and broke the faceplate. The Anbu was shocked by the news, since it gave Naruto the opportunity to hide, before he drew a chilly breath in front of the captain. Siberian, screamed the beast in a cold tone. He was able to rapidly replace him with the closest piece of wood, fastening it in place, thanks to his acute shearing eye. Don't let that fog hit you, the captain ordered as they gathered to chase the blue insect-like creature still in his cloak state. If that wasn't enough, he continued, how about a little speed? Pointing to the dial on his breast, and as soon as he pressed it, he was no longer the alien he had selected. Perplexed by the diamond on his skin, he cried out, Rombi. He was a living form based on silicon, and his body was composed of strong green crystals. He has 4 green crystal shards on his back and a pointy skull. He had on black sneakers and a belt with the Omnitrix emblem around his hip. Above all else, he was wearing a sleeveless V-neck shirt with an orange stripe in the middle and black stripes on either side. Nice, Naruto exclaimed, complimenting his efforts, and then he pointed at the Anbu, and fired him based on his skills and the information he had previously obtained. Green diamonds fired fast enough to hit the unwary Anbu in his line of sight. Naruto then aimed his timed rounds at the others, but he knew one was missing, so he wasn't shocked when one tried to hit him from behind. Grabbing the sword, he covered it and its wielder in a big diamond, and his arm turned into a blade to deflect the incoming sword attack. Naruto looked at his workmanship and remarked, that will hold you for some time, but he was blind to the Anbu weaving hand signals for the grand fireball spirit art behind him. Kaiten. No spirit art, fire style. Fireball spirit art. When Naruto learned of the assault, he sweated and formed a barrier with his palms to stop the attack. He said, that's some heat, but I can make hotter. Then he slammed the dial on his belt, and a new voice and a dazzling green light appeared. Hotspot. Instead of the diamond alien they were battling, something else had appeared. The body of Hotspot, a magma-based monster, is composed of brilliant internal lava that is covered in either dark red or brown pebbles. He is a fire-based person, thus the neighbors could feel the heat emanating from his body. His feet are small and round, with only 2 toes and 1 back toe. When all 4 were surrounded by a ring of fire, Naruto flew out and targeted in an attempt to ignite the heat and raise its height and temperature until it covered every Anbu in the ring. He put both of his arms on the floor to do this. According to one of the 2 Anbus who were still alive, I thought that he was supposed to be weak. Naruto glared at his vanquished enemies and the gem bearer as he shut off his power and extinguished the fire upon hearing the last Anbu drop. A voice cut him off as he was going to say, "Hun, didn't think he would actually go through with sending Anbu after me," in a mumble. Upon his return, Naruto saw his father standing in full headmaster war armor, his cloak and kunai poised. Beside him, the headmaster of Haddock 6 was reading the pornographic novel. "That's since you're my son and I'll do anything to get you home safely," replied Naruto. "What do you want?" asked Naruto frowningly. "I apologize for how I treated you, but this has to stop," Naruto's father was complaining. "You're sorry?" cried a cold Naruto. After yelling indignantly at what was stated, he collected himself and inhaled deeply. He turned his Omnitrix's dial, and the playlist came up. "You had 9 years to treat me right, 9 years to get your act straight, 9 years. And you think you can end redeem your words by saying you're sorry?" he asked. Before the sixth headmaster could stop him, he cracked a faceplate, selected his favorite alien in a flash of green light, and made his decision. "Chitrax," he exclaimed as Naruto Papa and sixth headmaster spotted a cat-like monster with a color scheme reminiscent of a black outfit. His blue hands, legs, and parts of his head and torso were spiked. His nose was triangular, his green eyes were surrounded by black fins that resembled a Wolverine mask, and the Omnitrix logo was arranged down his body in a style resembling a thunderbolt. With an eyebrow raise, the sixth headmaster asked, "What's this one supposed to do?" "You think you're standing beside the fastest man in the nations?" Naruto asked with a smirk and an imaginary eyebrow. "Think again," he continued, running forward. In a burst of energy, he was in front of sixth headmaster, striking him and sending the Jounin without a mask flying. Naruto looked at him and observed his father, who was shocked, soon get well while holding his kunai. Time seemed to slow down as he whirled around and punched the Naruto daddy hard in the stomach when he reappeared, before the headmaster could witness his son seize his special kunai and crush it to dust. Naruto Papa was on the ground, clutching his injured stomach with a wince, as he rose to his knees and took another kunai out of his pocket. But before time returned to its normal pace, his eyes rolled to the back of his head and hit the earth face first. "Tried to get out of that," Naruto stated before reversing course and departing the area to go to Wave Country's shipping port. "This is gonna be a long run," Asmuth told his head as he let out a breath and forwarded the coordinates to a particular family member group. Then he hurried to the body of the sixth headmaster and did it again, taking a step back, tapping the dial on his chest, and looking towards Siberia. He turned around and left after transforming into Chitrax, spitting at the still solidified Anbu to form a nearly impossible ice stone. In his role as Chitrax, Naruto was following orders to go swiftly across the continent to Bellwood. By the time he arrived, it was midday, and based on what he could see on the televisions. On other news, police still haven't made leeway at the hostage situation in Bellwood National Bank. It appears that the bands are armed to their teeth, as any wrong move would force drastic measures to be taken on their prisoners, said the reporter. Naruto looked over the state of the bank. He hurried to a nearby alley, knowing that it would be inappropriate to leave the individuals alone, and came out in normal shape in a blaze of green light. He saw passing to his right and asked a gentle question. The young man was courteous, but he couldn't help but add to Naruto, "Pardon me, ma'am. I'm new here and I was wondering if you could point me to the nearest bank." She giggled at this. "Aren't you a little young to be browsing all alone in a bank?" With a dismissive scoff, Naruto remarked, "My parents and I were going for a tour of the town, and I happened to separate from them a few minutes ago, but before the separation we were heading to the bank as the next stop." The mother frowned and asked, "What kind of parents leave their child unattended for?" Naruto's answer was, apparently, the parents that tend to be easily distracted. "Just around the corner 2 blocks away," the woman said with a smile. "I used the Omnitrix a lot today, so this had to be brief and to the point, or it would have deactivated itself." Naruto gestured his appreciation, but his face was tense. He yelled, "Gotta go," and sprinted to the closest bathroom as though he needed to go pee. "Should have just access to the master control," Naruto said, adjusting the dials on the watch. Where the faceplate was moved, a circular 2-dimensional hologram displaying information from the alien playlist appeared. Naruto picked out the ideal alien, threw the pictures away, and ruined it. An agitated Naruto said in a wrestler's voice to the dial on his breast, "Let me tell you something, Omnitrix, next time you choose the alien Wrath once a Wrath will destroy you." Naruto was a 9-foot-tall orange and white bipedal tiger with a single claw sticking out from each wrist, not the nimble extraterrestrial he had hoped for. He has emerald eyes and is also muscular. "Much better," he said, and hurried out from the bathroom he was using to the bank. Then, as anger pushed the dial on his breast, Chitrax took his place with a nod of appreciation, and he disappeared in the same green flash. Alongside the police. The policeman asked, "Any confirmation on that backup private?" The private was interrupted as the wind blew and they looked for the cause. "No, Chief, we're on our way right now." The man asked, "What in God's name was that?" "I don't know, Chief," the private replied as they went back into line. Among the banks. In the middle of the room was a crowd of people from various walks of life, including bankers of all shades. Before a dozen or more armed thieves showed up to steal their money, these people were going about their daily lives as usual. They are now requesting a ransom from the police, and just as the commander of the thugs seemed ready to speak, he disappeared and reappeared before the police chief, shackled, without an arm, and ready to be arrested. Upon glancing around, the leader realized he was outside the bank. Before he could question what just happened, he was stabbed with a taser. "That's one down," the leader declared. The policeman said, "What do you think happened?" As the other 8 outlaws assembled and readied themselves for court, the leader commanded, "Back up." The last thug was lost in contemplation, browsing the bank, when he saw a blonde, green-eyed woman trying to get out. Approaching her, the bandit tugged her hair and pointed the rifle at her face. "You see this?" he asked, addressing what appeared to be an empty room. He opened his mouth to pronounce 1, 2, 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 3, but as he squeezed the trigger, he felt nothing in his palm, and turned to look at the aghast blonde. He replied, "Unless you want this blonde's blood on your hands, you have until the count of 3 to come out and surrender." "What happened?" the blonde said as he looked about while still holding the woman. "I did," a voice said, and they all turned to see a humanoid creature shaped like a cat clutching the gun before he trampled it to dust. The blonde was dropped in terror as the man screamed, "What the devil are you, freak?" and swerved away. "Your worst dream," Naruto stated before confronting the thug, adding, "I hate it when guys like you threaten beautiful ladies like her." He then punched the man, knocked him unconscious, and removed his belt before leaving him for the police. "What's your name, miss?" Naruto inquired, going over to the blonde and taking off her gags. The constant beeping sound started, and they turned to face him to see the red flash on his chest dial. "Sandra," the woman whispered, sensuously in his presence. He had to do one more thing of courage. Everything seemed to be a whirl to Sandra, who was caught off guard and brought up in a bridal fashion, before she could even answer politely. "Care to show me your house?" "I'm sure your family must be worried," she replied. The flashback's conclusion. He told them about his current circumstances because he felt secure enough to trust them when they questioned him about why he was there instead of with his parents. They would treat all children equally if it were their time, but after hearing the joke, they were appalled at how a parent would treat his child because of something he did not have. After the Omnitrix's timer expired, he fainted from weariness and was kindly cared for by Sandra Tennyson, whom he saved. Naruto was then politely disowned, and it was agreed that they would raise him as their own if he consented. He has seen his new younger brother, Ben, since then, and Ben was happy to have an older sibling. He told his unofficial adoptive parents about it because his mother insisted on keeping an eye on him. His life had changed, and he felt more at home at a place he could call home. 2 years later, his adoptive parents were overjoyed when he began attending college on scholarship, but they were also sorry that he had to go. He went after promising his brother that he would come back. He was glad to return and meet his family after earning a 2-year advanced mechanical degree with a few electives. He thanked the bus driver and then got his bike from the front of the vehicle and rode it home. It has already been 2 years, for a total of 4 years. It was great to be home. At Bellwood High School. The ringer. Students were hurrying home from school when the bell rang to announce the start of summer break, but 2 bullies at the school had other plans. Before they went, they decided to torment someone, cornering a poor youngster in the process. The taller one smiled and went on, "Looky here, Cash." Little hotshot decided he could run home without saying goodbye to his 2 best friends. "JT," Cash shouted to his friend, crawling to the helpless toddler and hammering his fists. "Let's show him how much we'll miss him." After searching about, they found Ben Tennyson, the local loser, who had unintentionally assumed the job since his older brother had suggested it years earlier. The voice behind them said, "Hey, leave him alone." In one of his lectures, his brother advised him, "If you have the skills, don't hesitate to show them, but mess with your enemies first, deceive them until they believe you are nothing, then strike with a vengeance when you are ready." Ben Tennyson was 10 years old, with brown hair and green eyes. His white round-neck t-shirt had a broad black vertical stripe that extended from the neck to the waist. He was dressed in loose-fitting green cameo pants and black and white striped sneakers. He was ready to crush the bullies as he stood in the Goken fighting posture, glaring at them. "But Cash, Bruce Lee Jr. thinks he can beat us," JT said, and he chuckled. Cash encouraged Ben, ignoring the child they were torturing. "Why don't we have some fun with him, and show him not to mess with his betters?" They both charged him, and Ben grinned. A few milliseconds later, Ben calmly came over and picked up the child they were troubling, and the child thanked him for his help. "Hey, get us down," JT screamed to Ben from a branch while he and his companion were giggling at the bully who was dangling in his panties. "You're welcome," Bennett said. "How did you learn how to move like that?" inquired the logger. "I taught him," a voice whispered behind them, and Ben rubbed his head in fear at the man he knew. "But you did good, lil bro." The next line made him flush with approval. Ben saw his big brother smiling at him when he looked up. "Stop that, you're embarrassing me," he said, rubbing his cheek and waving his hand away from him. His brother shrugged. "That's what big brothers are for," Naruto said, reaching inside his back to pull out a green and black skateboard, after which he handed it to Ben, who seemed ecstatic. Wow, awesome, exclaimed Ben as he trailed behind his brother to his bike. He boarded, and they both came home smiling, barely listening to the bully's cries for help. Next, Ben leaped off his board as soon as he got home and ran to tell his folks the good news. Mom, Dad, you won't believe who just picked me up from school, he said as he entered the living room and saw his mother. She turned to smile at him. Your big brother? She asked, laughing at Ben's startled look. I sent him there to pick you up, if not, your grandpa would have. Ben went to his room and cried out, Grandpa's here. I totally forgot about the summer vacation, his words, gotta go pack up. Ben turned around to see a slim, obese man in his late 60s, discussing his thirst for adventure. His grandfather wore a white shirt with a scarlet button-up shirt with flowers on it, blue jeans, black shoes, and gray hair. The speaker said, Don't worry Tyke, Naruto already done that for you, your things are in the RV. Ben hugged and embraced his granddad before running outside to the RV. He answered. Grandpa, replied Ben, this is going to be amazing. When Naruto complained about his brother's happiness, he smiled and came out of their room to see his grandfather, Max, smiling at him. Ready to go? Max said, and Naruto nodded. Unfortunately, his mother yelled before he could leave. She questioned, Are you going to tell him? I'll tell him tonight, Naruto answered, making both parents grin as he scratched his chin and thought about how this would go if it did. As he looked around, he noticed his Omnitrix on his wrist and the excited looks on his mother's and grandfather's faces. His mother thought it was a fine idea, and his grandfather agreed. After saying, Well, we should get started, Max added, Don't want to burn daylight, and left the house. Before they followed, Naruto hugged his mother. Outside of, as she wore white capris and a blue shirt with a cat emblem on the breast, a female voice exclaimed, Grandpa, what's taking so long? I already have second thoughts on coming along for this vacation because I can't spend another minute with this dweeb here. Her eyes were green, and her short red hair was tied in a blue hair clip. She had a horrified look on her face as she was exiting the RV. Finally, what took you? Her grandfather said, and she sighed with relief, but she couldn't finish because she was looking at what she thought was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. Is something wrong? Max asked, glancing at Gwen, who was behaving like a teenage girl in a daze. Then, behind him, he noticed Naruto. Suppressing a smirk, he tapped Naruto's shoulder, startling him into looking at his grandfather. Hey, kid, looks like you got a crush, he whispered to Naruto, and the boy turned to gaze at the location his grandfather was indicating, while frowning bewilderedly at the female in front of him. Naruto replaced his scarlet hood with an orange long-sleeve jacket with the colors facing up, brown cameo pants, a dark blue round-neck blouse, and the same pair of sneakers. Grinning and wearing headphones around his neck that willing to an iPod in his pocket, he walked toward the woman in front of him. He said courteously, Hello, I'm Naruto, Ben's adopted big brother. What's your name? Naruto could only grin at its splendor. She quickly corrected herself, embarrassed by her mistake in front of him. Gwen, my name is Nam, my friends call me Gwen. Could I give you a call, Gwen? Naruto asked. Gwen murmured, sure, you can, with a dazed sigh. You can call me anything you want. I think I'm gonna enjoy being friends with you, Naruto said before heading to the RV. Then holding off till she arrived before he did. Gwen blushed at the gesture and rushed inside to thank Naruto before the car pulled off. Naruto got into the RV, grinning. Before shutting the door after a few minutes, the RV left Tyson Manor behind. Campsite at 8 o'clock. Max brought out a bowl of what looked like noodles as the three kids were making dinner, but upon closer inspection, they were horrified. The RV was parked in the woods. Disgusted by what he was eating, Naruto said, What the heck is that? Marinated mealworms, said Max, hard to find fresh in the States. They're considered a delicacy in some countries. Gwen said, and completely hideous in others, feeling happy to be seated next to Naruto, but horrified by the sheer quantity of worms in front of her. If these not sound good, I have some smoked sheep dung in the refrigerator, said Max. What the ugh, Ben said from across the table. Gwen agreed with him and asked, Can't we have a burger or something? But was disappointed when he declined. For the R, B, and C, Max went. I'll grab the tongue, he replied, but your taste buds are in for a delicious journey this summer. As he, Ben, and Gwen gathered to come up with a solution, Naruto asks, I have 3 Rice Krispie bars in my bag, what about you guys? Some rice cakes, she was told by Gwen. Half-eaten bag of corn chips, Ben murmured to his brother as he turned to face them. When Naruto said, Think it can last. They all let out a dejected sigh. Meanwhile, on the boundary of space, one of the beams struck a smaller cargo ship that was avoiding the beams that a larger battleship was transmitting as fast as it could, causing a slight malfunction. Grids on the battleship's control panel aimed a beam at the prototype Omnitrix, the ship carrying their current subject of interest. One of the droids, looking into the ship's shadows where their master was sleeping, noticed a pair of crimson eyes as the beam struck. It then addressed its master. Their propulsion systems have suffered. Their master said in a raspy voice, I want the Omnitrix now, so get on board. Suddenly they felt a beam from the spaceship below. The commander ordered a huge explosion to destroy 3/4 of the transport ship because he was so furious. There was a faint gleam when a pod separated from the ship bound for Earth. Concerning Earth. Gwen browsed while Ben played video games on his big brother's computer. When Max showed up to ask questions after seeing his grandchildren, Naruto wasn't present. They'll want to roast marshmallows. Can't, busy, was their response, and Max moaned before coming in with a somewhat dejected look. When Ben stated, I need to go for a walk, he stopped playing his game and turned off Naruto's computer, and Gwen shook her head and fled into the forest. With Ben. Ben was groaning as he walked across the forest after napping about how boring he thought this summer would be. He saw a spark in the sky when he was strolling with his hands in his pockets. Whoa, a shooting star. He shouted, but as the star veered toward him, his amazement soon gave way to anxiety. There was a small explosion as the shooting star struck the ground, and he jumped away in shock. As the explosion ended and Ben started to recover, he saw a crater. When he reached it and peered inside, he saw something burning red and steaming from the extreme heat, but it wasn't deep. Looks like a satellite or something, he replied, observing something within the hole after leaping into it. It looked like a big black and gray wristwatch with a green Hergla-shaped gray or black dial in the middle, like a watch face. Ben asked, what's a watch doing in outer space? As he extended his left hand to grasp it, but it gripped his wrist instead. Curious, Ben looked at the watch that was attached to his wrist. Despite his first shock, he realized that this wouldn't go away, so he pressed the 2 green dials on either side together. The faceplate ascended and the arrows facing each other shifted, revealing a humanoid figure with a fire head. He pushed the image down, then changed it with a green light flash. He looked at his hands and remarked, I'm on fire, but I don't feel anything. He suddenly became aware of the deeper, more raspy tone in his voice. He charged a fireball, and pointed it at a branch of the tree in front of him, wondering, looking at his chin and said, whoa, my voice changed. Ben made the stupid choice to spread little to medium-sized fireballs over the forest, after making a flawless shot and grinning, sweet. This resulted in the beginning of a forest fire. When Ben noticed this a minute later, he exclaimed, uh-oh, worried that the fire may spread to the tent. Without using water, he tried to put it out the old-fashioned way. The campground. While Ben worked on his own issues, Gwen searched for anything using her computer and Wi-Fi. How to impress guys, he replied, and that's when she realized the figure was coming up behind her. He laughed at her remark. The figure jokingly remarked, you don't need to go to the net to find out how to impress me. Gwen turned off her computer and turned to Naruto, who was grinning strangely in delight. It wasn't for you, she murmured, blushing even more. When Naruto, who was looking for his brother, discovered anything, she jumped up, grabbed her computer, and rushed into the R&V. Who's dumb enough to start a forest fire? He asked, and Gwen's and his eyes widened in understanding as they both answered at once. Ben. I'll get the fire extinguisher, Naruto offered, and Gwen immediately put down her computer to follow him as he went into the woods to look for Ben. There's fire in the forest. When Ben couldn't put out the fire, he became a little nervous. He might as well accept the punishment right away after hearing footsteps behind him, even if his brother would be upset to hear this. Naruto turned around as Gwen screamed in fear at the falling thing in front of her, but Naruto stood resolutely and boldly in front of her, assuming the Goken position and wearing a severe expression. What are you? He asked quietly, not knowing what the girl was thinking behind him. Gwen's admiration for him was becoming more than her fear, and he was so courageous to protect me from that flaming creature. I wish I had his level of bravery. The creature yelled, guys, calm down, it's me Ben, but Naruto abruptly threw him back with a roundhouse kick to the front. Even the most terrible monster would have been terrified by Naruto's face. It's one thing for you to start a forest fire that was intended to harm others, Naruto said, ignoring the effect it was having on a particular deed. Then, without warning, he pulled out a pair of silver nunchaku, and, in a display of skill, swung them about before crashing them to the floor. Naruto spoke the words, it's another to go impersonating my little brother, that is something that I cannot take lightly, prior to his charge at the beast. The beast needed to move fast since he knew Naruto could beat him if he wanted to. He subsequently came up with a plan that prevented Naruto from stating, those who break the rules are trash, but those that abandon their comrades are worse. You told me that before you started training me in martial arts, and you gave me another advice. If you have the skills, don't hesitate to show them, but mess with your enemies, till they believe you are nothing, then strike with a vengeance when ready. What makes you think I'm not following it now? What happened? Naruto asked uncertainly. Ben. What had happened right before his brother and cousin arrived, plus the fact that his brother had taught him martial arts while Naruto was meditating, left Gwen a little surprised. Ben had already completed his assignment with skill and grace when Naruto suggested, why don't we get rid of this fire with a counter-fire first before we come up with any decision? Naruto was impressed by what he had done before he heard it beep, and watched the emblem on Ben's breast flash red before fading. Then, in an instant, Ben was back to normal. That's some funky watch, Naruto said, examining the Omnitrix on Ben's hand, and Gwen agreed. Gwen asked, curious, I wonder how many aliens you could transform into, but then she heard their grandfather jogging, and turned to see him approaching. Max, gasping for air, said, will someone please explain to me what happened here? Naruto decided to provide him with the most important information about what had transpired. The limits of space. What do you mean it's not there? Whispered an eerie voice in the battleship from before. The robot's dismembered master, in the tube helping him recover from the recent conflict, led to two larger, more combat-oriented droids and said, sensors indicate that a probe was sent to the planet below us just before the ship was evacuated. The first droid left the spacecraft to defend the Omnitrix when the master issued the order. The droids said, one of you go, the other followed 10 minutes later. Going back to Earth. Looks like it's a playlist of 10 different aliens, each with their own unique abilities, Gwen said after scrutinizing the watch. I think the best option is to train in each of these forms, so that you can get the hang of each transformation, know their strengths and weaknesses, so that if you transform into one you don't want, you can use the current alien to ensure victory, Naruto said, and Max agreed. And I know which alien to pick, Ben said, absently turning the dial on his watch. He pushed off the faceplate as it rose, and Ben vanished in a burst of green light, to be replaced by a massive orange dog the size of a car, devoid of any ears, eyes, or tail. He had pointy teeth that stuck out of his mouth. Roar. Ben exclaimed incredulously, his voice gone. Gwen remarked sharply, it looks like it has no eyes, as she swept her arms in front of his dog figure. Its ability to sense the approaching attack astounded Naruto, so it used a stick to test its other reactions. His reply was, but it has other senses. Ben was so excited that he decided to test drive this extraterrestrial, pushing deeper into the forest and disregarding objections. Before he heard the UFO beeping and sensed a laser pointed at him, he was too distracted to notice it. To find out what was causing the damage, he jumped to another tree hanging off it. He spotted a weird-looking robot that appeared like a flying saucer, with hands and legs, gazing down at him before it shot. The robot was searching for Ben because he was out of sight and avoiding all of its shoots. But when Ben leaped at him and ripped off his head, it was taken by surprise. Ben jumped off the robot as it approached the wall, but before he could go any further, the Omnitrix emblem on his shoulders started beeping red. Ben returned to normal after landing and gave the explosion a perfect score, but then he noticed another robot hovering over him and heard a beep. When his older sibling kicked it off and crashed, his skull pounded. Uh-oh, he cried out. Don't do that next time. Naruto yelled at Ben. Ouch. Ben mumbled, rubbing his nervous head. I'm sorry, okay, I wouldn't run off like that. Later on. We shouldn't fool around with that thing until we know what it is, Max responded. What you did was reckless, Ben. Sorry, Grandpa, Ben murmured disdainfully. About the watch, I think there's a function in it that lets you stay transformed into the aliens you pick, Naruto stated. Ben shouted, that would be so cool, then I wouldn't have to worry about the timeout when saving lives, much to Gwen's dismay. We haven't decided what to do with it yet apart from getting familiar with the alien's doofus, so don't get your hopes up, answered Gwen. Radio. We need someone to help us, Mayday. I think we're being assaulted by some kind of robot. Looks like the decision on whether we want to help people changed just now, Naruto said, and they headed out of the RV. To help the inhabitants. When Ben arrived at the danger zone, he used the Omnitrix's dial to choose the right alien, slammed the faceplate down, and Diamond had emerged in a flash of green light. Naruto saw the robot attacking before bidding his brother farewell. I'll get its attention, you guys get the campers to safety, Ben said, and they nodded after him. The battle droid scanned Ben's whole body before recognizing the Omnitrix insignia on his chest. Then, as they were walking away, it threw a beam from his palm at him, knocking him back a little. The robot in Diamond had staggered a little as Ben charged at it and punched it. As he cut his way out of the wreckage, Ben remarked, cool, looking at his hand before charging at the robot and attempting to punch it. Ben spotted it coming and flipped back when the robot jumped to avoid the hit and attempted to land on him. The droid then fired a beam at Ben when he shifted into his Goken position and gave it a come-hither motion. If Naruto hadn't been there to kick the tree in half, Ben would have swerved around the beam and redirected it to a tree, where it would have fallen straight on an unwary Gwen. Naruto asked, glancing at Gwen, who held her cheek in surprise. Are you okay? When Gwen only nodded and escorted her to a more secure area, Naruto gave Ben the all-clear. Ben snatched the droid's hand, twisted it into a sword, and cut it off after dodging its claw swipe. The droid staggered backwards a bit, looked at the ruined hand, then turned back to Ben, who was smiling at it. Then it aimed a stronger beam at Ben, who saw the attack coming, and swatted the reflected beam away, destroying it entirely. Alright, the crowd screamed, and Gwen. Max said, congratulations, Diamond Head. I think my work here is done, Ben stated as he left the room, looking at his nails and grinning at his applauding audience. At the boundary of space. You may go and complete this mission, the master said as the second fighting robot came out of his tube. Then the robot went to the hatch of the ship and fired itself directly at Earth. Making use of Tennyson's Max turned to Naruto, who groaned and nodded as the Omnitrix went into timeout mode, and the Tennysons got ready for the night. As his cousin and younger brother were getting ready for bed, he walked up to them and said, "And I might as well tell you too, Gwen," glancing at a receptive Gwen. "Ben, there's something I need to tell you, and I guess now is as good a time as any," he said. "What about Grandpa?" asked Ben. Naruto said, "He already knows," and then he pulled the sleeve off his hand to show Ben and Gwen his watch. But Gwen started to see similarities between Ben's Omnitrix and the watch. "That's just a watch, Naruto, you told me," said Ben. They discovered another combat robot nearby while they were looking. "It's not a watch, Ben, it's a crash." "Crap, watch is timed out, I can't do anything," exclaimed Ben desperately as Naruto strode gravely in the direction of the droid. "You don't have to," he said to his brother, and before Ben could protest, Naruto pressed his wrist to his chest, pushed the dial on his Omnitrix, and the faceplate moved, forming a hologram of the many aliens he had collected. A green glow filled the room as Naruto selected the one he wanted, and, like Ben had done previously, slapped the faceplate down. The finish of it came to them in the shape of a hilarious wrestler-like voice. "No one messes with the Wrath," he yelled, striking his right hand with his left. "Let me tell you something, you stupid robot. You think you and your buddy can come here and mess with Wrath's family time?" he responded. "Is it your brother?" Gwen questioned, pointing to what they were witnessing, and Ben merely nodded, shocked that what he had just seen would drive him insane. "Not quite, but this is a significant issue." In front of them was a huge 9-foot figure that resembled a white and orange tiger on 2 feet, with one claw sticking out of each wrist and no tail. His emerald eyes were burning with anger, and he was extraordinarily strong. Wrath yelled, "Roar!" and rushed to the robot, snatching its arm just as it was about to swipe, then removing it with a claw. After glancing at the arm and the droid, Wrath chuckled and charged once more, slapping the robot with the machine's arm. "Stop hitting yourself," he said as he smashed the robot with his arm, effortlessly destroying it each time. Gwen said, "Wow, your brother really knows how to handle himself," appalled at the brutality. Max answered, "Don't worry about him, it's a character trait of this form. It seems he's prone to anger and sulks it the only way it knows how." When Ben saw this, he asked his granddad, "His fists? How do you know that? I thought you knew nothing about the watch." "I helped your brother train," was all he said to reassure Ben. "Looks like he's done," Gwen thought as they saw Wrath rip the droid's head off, crush it, and jump off it as it made contact with the ground. Wrath cried out in triumph, then went to his family and pressed the dial on his chest to turn off the Omnitrix. This showed Naruto responding to his brother's demanding demeanor by clawing the back of his skull. Yes, it was going to be a great summer. Ben was happy when Naruto first informed him how and what his watch was, but he soon got upset that Naruto had concealed this information from him. In order to lift his spirits, Naruto taught him how to utilize his Omnitrix, though not to the best of his abilities because it would be unjust. To perform it as well as he did, he needed experience. Besides, he found that Gwen was nearly as smart as he is, so he could talk to her about complicated mechanics. She was thrilled and practically wanted to see the plasma weapon he had created when he told her about it. She tested it on a tree that completely burst. It was a weapon with a strong laser. She wanted to go out with him after he described the inner workings of the gun, but since she was just 10, they opted to stay friends instead. Around this time, Ben was developing his own version of Hotspot, which he decided to call Heat Blast, and he was using the gadget for a new user with success. He was unable to complete the instruction, though, since they jumped into the RV and fled to help the police, when the radio signal picked up a police broadcast, indicating that there was a burning house nearby. Within the burning home. Under the burning house, 2 persons were trapped. As he looked down at Ben in awe, Heat Blast clutched the crumbling ceiling, but Ben, a hero, came to their rescue just in time. "Who are you?" asked the youngster, shielded by his mother, as he saw Heat Blast seize the stacks of wood that were about to fall on them. When Ben saw a door, he set the fire around them to make a path for them to follow. He whispered, "Don't worry, I'm here to help," as he held the blazing wood. The child ran to the door and reached the stairs that led down and out of the house, when Ben gave the all clear. However, it collapsed just as they were about to leave, trapping them. "This way." Ben yelled and led them to a window, enveloping them with a whirlpool of flames to get them both safely out of the building. "I'm sure you all want to thank me, but really it's all in a day's work," for Ben spoke to the stunned audience in front of him, before he observed something that attracted his eye. He exclaimed, "No way." The gold sumo slammer card. In awe of the golden cards. Then he hurried to join the child he had helped earlier. He inquired, "Where did you get it?" "I found it in a box of sumo slammer cereals." The boy stated to the fire monster beside him, asking why it would want one of these. When the rust bucket arrived, Naruto yelled, "Yo Heat Blast. Stop messing around," and Max and Gwen did the same. "That was a distraction, the robbers are on the run." "On it." Ben yelled and got to his feet, aiming his weapons at the ground while pursuing the RV. As it passed, leaving behind a confused throng of people. Ben soared to the second car and slammed on its roof, shocking the drivers inside. While waiting, the RV They flew behind the second vehicle and barely below the robber's vehicle. Robber 1 saw a rust bucket following them outside and said, "What the hell was that?" to his accomplice. "I don't know, man, but there's an RV chasing us," Robber 2 said to Robber 1. He was holding Robber 2 when Robber 2 was jerked from his seat and the roof was torn off, causing Ben to fly at the abrupt stop and crash into the fence in front of him. His teammate had to use force to stop the van. Unaware of the flames above them, his buddy kept up the speed in an attempt to pass the car. As he emerged from the debris and set the knocked-out thief down, Ben muttered, "Ouch, now that was not what I was going for," while holding him in his palm. He heard a click as the driver pointed an AK-47 at his face. Ben slapped the gun with a little fire, melting it and making the thief drop it to the ground. "You gotta be pretty stupid to think that'll stop me," he said. When Ben said, "Now I'm gonna have to ask you to get on your knees with your arms behind your back," the thief was compelled to comply. But he was kneeling when he noticed a red light and heard a beep. "Hey, you're just a kid," the burglar shot back, glancing sidelong at a distorted Ben who seemed unaware that the Omnitrix had vanished. The snarling robber was ready to get up and strike the child when he heard automobiles passing by. He was knocked down after being frightened. "And I can still whoop your butt," Ben told him. Ben took the Goken's combat stance. "Secure the other one, tie them up, and take them to the cars," the head cop said, as Ben let out a sigh of relief. "It's safe to go home, kid. By the way, I love how you held your own against a superior opponent." Ben and his family waited for him on the corner of the street and said thanks, before getting into the RV. Max was told to go to Mega Mart and get some cereal. Meanwhile, at an apartment building. Click. The owner had not paid the rent for over 6 months, so when the door was unlocked, an irate person entered. Numerous creatures were kept behind protective glass in the frightening abode. "Phew, smells like a zoo in here," the man said as he continued toward the person he was seeking, until he reached an empty cage. A frog jumped out of the log while he was inspecting it, scaring him a little. The owner asked, "How did you get in?" And the manager was unaware that the shadow was coming from behind, which caused him to have a mini heart attack. The manager said, "Passkey," and adjusted his tie. "Even though your rent is 6 months past due, I am still your landlord," he stated. The scientist said, "I put all of my money into my research. Now get out, you're disturbing me," he continued, pointing to the door. The landlord was hoping that Animo, the tenant, would pay, but he said, "Looks like you were disturbed long before I got here. Listen, doctor, unless you pony up the green, you and your furry friends are out on the street." Pony up. Interesting choice of phrases. Animo said, picking up a frog from his surrounds. "You must be an animal lover, then you're going to love this," he said, dropping the frog to the ground before removing a 2-horned helmet that caused his unexpected guest to chuckle. "What's that? You a member of the Moose Lodge or something?" the landlord inquired. "Observe," he added smugly, turning the dial on his chest. "This is my transmodulator. Phase 1, it creates and accelerates mutations at the genetic level," Animo said, pointing to the device that was fastened to his chest. The device accelerated and focused each horn's red beams on the frog that was in its line of sight. With a pair of horns on its head and 2 eyes, one above the other, the frog appeared to grow until it nearly touched the chamber's roof in a burst of crimson light. The frog swallowed the landlord whole, and Animo could do nothing to stop it. As the mutated frog spat the landlord out of his mouth and against the wall, knocking him unconscious, he began to cackle more forcefully. "I'm sorry, I can't hear you, but it sounds like you got a frog in the throat, or should I say it's the other way around." Exclaiming, "I'm so close to getting what is rightfully mine, all I need is a few lousy components, and I'll be able to finish my work," Animo held up a small fragment of an old newspaper story. "So whether your need from hairspray to electronics," said Animo in response to a colorful television commercial for the brand new Megamart. He went on, exactly what the doctor ordered. Making use of Tennyson's. While walking through a superstore with Ben, Gwen, Max, and Rideau, he spotted the cereal section, and quickly grabbed the first box of Sumo Slammer cereal he saw. As Max pushed the trolley, Ben was captivated by what he was seeing and kept gazing to the left and right. Ben laughed cheekily as he looked at his Omnitrix, and noticed that Max and Gwen were busy getting food, while Rideau was in the electronics area. "Sumo Slammer cards, cool," he exclaimed. Then an idea started to take shape in his mind. Alongside Rideau. Rideau wondered how far along Ben was in his training as he glanced around the electronics section. Ben was pleased with himself after mastering flame control, and was astounded by his ability to improvise with heat blast. Ben was now thinking about which alien to train next, and which to unleash as a gift, in case he destroyed 5 of his aliens. "Gray matter. It's not necessary for you to introduce him. How about Ghost Freak?" "No, I always have this weird feeling when Ben changes into that alien." Regarding Ictonierites, what did Asmuth say? "When I have more time, I'll think about it. Who should I train next?" His granddad snapped out of his trance when Gwen asked him the question. "No offense, Grandpa, but can we have a normal dinner for once?" Remembering that he wanted to grab some actual food and hide it from his grandfather, he made a quick selection in the store's pasta department before heading to the canned goods aisle to get some spices for the sauce he intended to cook. He pocketed the item in a scroll after paying for it. As he passed the cereal section, he noticed Gwen chatting with the store manager. She was clutching a small gray toy that moved on her arms and disappeared behind her back. He approached them and asked, "Is something the matter?" Rideau moaned instantly when he realized it was Ben who had done it. "Yes," the store manager replied, gesturing to the chaos around them. "This young lady over here thought it would be a good idea to open these boxes of cereal spread all over the place. I'll handle it from here and pay for the boxes," Rideau replied before leaving, to the manager's appreciative smile. Gwen allowed Ben to fall to the ground as gray matter when they decided it was time for retribution after hearing a beep. With a squeaky voice, the gray matter asked, "Why did you have to do that?" A bright light suddenly turned on, and Ben emerged in the gray matter space, clutching his injured ass. "Ben," Rideau clarified. Rideau let out a sigh and motioned for them to collect the boxes as he went to get Grandpa. "Sorry, won't happen again, I swear," Ben said, admitting that his brother might occasionally be frightening. Later on, while Rideau was just taking out his cash beside the register, angry that he had to pay for his foolish brother's actions, Ben was scowling since he hadn't obtained what he wanted. Gwen, standing by Rideau, was also irritated at Ben, while Max was just baffled as to how this had occurred. As they prepared to pay for the items, the store started to shake and they felt mini quakes, so terrified that the manager leaped under the table. The collisions. Dr. Animo on Hit Frog was observed entering the store as the smoke from the explosion in the wall adjacent to them subsided. Ben said, "Whoa," as Gwen and Max gaped. "Not at all, Naruto." Animo moved away from them and headed to the electrical section, since Ben was not having any of that. When he found what he wanted, he got off his frog and went to get it. He screamed, "Hey, what are you doing?" as he grabbed the objects, despite the rest of his family's attempts to quiet him. Animo said, "Don't be a hero, kid," and walked over to Ben. "Just run along and play." Ben instantly steered clear of the frog's tongue and faced his powered-down Omnitrix. Just as Animo was about to leave, two mall policemen prevented him from sitting on his frog. "Get down of that giant frog and put your hands up," said Officer 1. "Freeze." When the policeman tried to call for help, Animo jumped over him and smiled, finding some new experiments in the animal section of the store. Animo reached the aisle he was looking for, twisted the dial on his chest, and aimed the beams that blasted upon the hamster and bird that were pets. At Animo's direction, both creatures were to change into larger, more repulsive versions of themselves. "Arise to your full potential, my pets." Meanwhile, when Ben and his family got there and observed the changed creatures becoming bigger, he had to say something. "Whoa, what kind of pet foods are they serving around here?" "I know I wouldn't want to buy it," Naruto said, and Max and Gwen agreed. To his astonished crowd, he exclaimed, "Look, here is Dr. Aloysius James Animo's genius. Nothing can stop me from getting what I deserve. Mark my words, today I'll make history, or should it be prehistory?" "Ben?" asked Gwen. Following Ben's statement, "The Omnitrix is out, I can't help," they all turned to look at Naruto, who was gasping at them. "What?" he asked himself. "Aren't you going to help?" asked Ben. "Think of it as experience." Naruto replied, "What would you do if the Omnitrix wasn't available?" They all fled when the giant hamster yelled at them, even Naruto, who had considered hurting the animals, but changed his mind after witnessing the hamster's pursuit. It wasn't until he vaulted over him and Ben and cornered Max and Gwen that he made the decision to resign. Then he saw a ball and told Ben to hide as he threw it at the hamster. Despite Gwen and Max's protests, Naruto screamed, "Hey ugly, come and get it," as the hamster leaped at him violently while striking the Goken position. He dove beneath the charge and kicked the hamster in the stomach, sending it flying through the air, after waiting for it to approach him. Then, using the shelves as support, he leaped above the hamster and, without realizing it, moved chakra to his leg to intensify the hit. After spinning, he dropped it, causing it to smash forcefully on the ground, knocking it out completely. "That was awesome," said Gwen as she stood. Max was muttering, "Thanks for the save, kiddo," from where he stood, and Ben, still in disbelief from his fast run, could see it. He asked, "Are you okay, Grandpa?" Max dismissed his worry until the ground shook, signaling that the enraged Animo had returned. The mutant bird that had come to get him was the target of Animo's leap from his frog. Saying, "You fool, you cannot stop me." After that, the frog followed them out of the store. "I will turn Washington, D.C. into Washington, B.C." The store manager cried out, "You saved the store," as the monsters departed. "If there's anything I can do to repay you, anything you want," I replied. "Well," Ben thought astutely and grinned. Max pulled him out of the store, followed by Naruto and Gwen, before he could continue journeying. The RV was being driven by Max on the road, and it was chasing the huge bird with Animo sitting on top of it. Max said, "Ah, this reminds me of the good old day," as Ben pouted in the front seat because he had misplaced his sumo slammer cards before I retired. "So what kind of plumber were you?" Gwen said after spotting an issue. Max said, a darn good one, with a little more hesitancy. Gwen's seatmate Naruto, at the back, said, Ben, stop pouting in front. You'll get the cards next time. Ben said, fine, and Naruto exhaled with satisfaction, but then they heard Gwen's computer ring. Bingo. Gwen yelled to draw everyone's attention. 5 years ago, Animo was a promising researcher in veterinary science, but it turns out, he was mutating animals, and when he didn't win some big prize, well, he threw a tantrum like a baby and vowed revenge. Naruto added, and Gwen nodded. Didn't he say he wanted to make prehistory? Max asked as he was driving. That's it. I know where he's going, Ben exclaimed, shocking Gwen. They had just concluded that the Natural History Museum was the only place they knew he would be from, so they went there after he explained his idea. As they packed the RV, Ben, Max, and Gwen got out. As they rushed into the museum, Gwen noticed that Naruto had been left behind. Why aren't you coming? She asked, drawing the attention of the other two. Yeah, we could use the help, said Ben. You guys go on, there's something I want to check out first, Naruto stated as Ben and Max headed for the door, while Gwen, who was interested in the city, hung back. She replied, what do you want to do that made you stay behind? Said Naruto, I want to give a test run to something that I've been working on. It's just a prototype though. With excitement, she asked, can I see? I don't want to lose one of my first true friends, she remarked, brushing off her interest. In due time, head in after those two and be careful out there, said Naruto. Naruto was happy that Gwen had left him alone after blushing here. Then he went back to the RV. When he opened the package he produced, Max, a black ninja face with red edges, was seen. After examining himself in the bathroom mirror, he put the mask over his head. Black ninja spandex, with red accents around his arms and feet, wrapped his entire body and fit him like a glove. There were red seals all over his body. He also wore a scarlet martial arts belt around his hips and a red scarf. The only thing that showed through the eye holes of the clothes he had constructed himself were his beautiful blue eyes. Naruto said, not bad, now to take this for a test run, after assessing himself in the mirror. He then dropped 3 smoke bombs on the ground, causing them to explode. He vanished as well when they cleared. Together with the others. Max, Gwen, and Ben were in the museum, following the feather trail and the destruction caused by the insane doctor. Wow, never thought I'd spend my summer vacation visiting a history museum, said Ben. Even a dweeb like you needs to learn a thing or two before school resumes, said Gwen, and Ben echoed her frustration. Max said, now kids, we weren't here to argue, we were looking for the mad doctor, as they turned a particular corner. And I think we found him, Ben said, seeing Animo at work. Animo looked up from his work and directed his beams toward the lifeless bone of a mammoth on exhibit in the museum. It's time for phase 2 of my strategy, he said, aiming his transmodulator at the bones. I hate persistent, he replied, you're too persistent. All of the mammoth's body was still there, and from the blazing eyes on his face, it was furious. Behold the genus that is Animo. Exclaimed Animo before he left the mammoth to deal with these pests. Ben, mumbled Gwen. Ben said, let's wrestle. As he rolled into forearms and pressed the chest dial. After Animo used all of his might to fight the mammoth, his grandfather and cousin seized the chance to hunt him down. But Gwen and Max saw Animo examining the Triceratops bone in the dinosaur exhibit. He resurrected the species and ordered it to attack the Tennysons and the new bird by focusing his transmodulator laser onto the bones before they could stop him. When Animo saw they were distracted, he focused the beam on a Tyrannosaurus rex's bones, reviving it before jumping on it. A person shouting out to them and something being tossed at them diverted the Tennysons from their best efforts to avoid the beasts in front of them. He cried and said, no one will stop me from getting what is rightfully mine, before abandoning his dogs. Hey ugly, get ready to be extinct. Again. Gwen and Max turned to see a figure around Naruto's height, wearing a red guy belt that matched the outfit, and a black ninja jumpsuit with a red vertical line down the front from neck to hip. He wore a dark crimson scarf, and his mask had a red outline running vertically from his head to his eyes. His eyes were uncovered, which was probably the only part of the garment that Gwen could see. If you haven't seen Randy Cunningham, 9th grade ninja yet, you should Google it. He stood looking down at them from the wall. She only smiled. The outfit never covered the hairdo. Max wasn't sure who this person was and didn't want them in his RV, so he was taken aback when she said, is this the thing you said you were getting out of the RV? Of course, only a smart girl like you would be able to realize the boy she has a crush on has a mask, Naruto said, sending a flush through Gwen's face. Naruto chuckled to himself as Gwen said, I do not have a crush on you, and Max knew who it was. Naruto? He asked. Naruto was about to reply when the wall shook, and the Triceratops underneath were exposed. A blade materialized as he instructed Max to hold that thought, and he jumped to the ground a short distance away from the dinosaur. Then it came running for him, and he scrambled to the wall. He prepared his blade and jumped from the wall before it buzzed in front of the Triceratops. He closed his eyes in meditation as the Triceratops charged at him once more, and time appeared to slow down. When he opened his eyes, he was in a fast-moving blur behind the Triceratops. Musijin no Kensai Sakujo. Unlimited blade works. Gwen saw the bird a few seconds later, grabbed a stick, and attacked it. At the time, Gwen and her grandfather were still in shock at what they had seen. Its triceratops were cut off completely, its torso was sliced deep, and it shattered into tiny fragments. He's not the only one with moves you know, said Gwen, as Naruto appeared in front of them, and the bird briefly retreated. Yo! He exclaimed. Before he could react, a bird behind him attacked, snatching Gwen by the handbag with its talons and taking off with her. Gwen asked, how did you do that? Since she was interested in how he managed to achieve his goals. Just then, Four Arms showed up, saw his cousin kidnapped, and carelessly followed the bird, leaving Max and Naruto behind. Max asked, so, how did you get the suit? To his adopted grandson. With minor help from my smart aliens, I managed to build a prototype biosuit that helps unlock dormant powers. If only you wear the mask, it would only accept those with dormant abilities, and help them experience what they could do if said skillset is unlocked, explained Naruto. So the ninja thing? Max asked. He added, my chakra is all but gone, he doesn't know it's healed yet, but I am the result of two powerful ninjas, even though I despise them so very, very much. He instantly knew the person Naruto was speaking to. Why don't we go help Ben and Gwen? Max later suggested, and Naruto agreed before taking off the mask. After one seal operation, he was dressed in civilian clothing again. Later on, Ben ended up sleeping in a hole that his alien form had created when he was unable to catch the bird and let it fly off with his cousin. Max was staring at him as the RV came to a stop in front of him as he got up and walked out of the crater. They heard the cell phone in the RV while they were traveling, so Ben smiled and hopped into the car, wondering, did someone call for a taxi? Grandpa? Naruto asked. On it, Max replied, and continued toward the Washington Monument, which was the signal's origin. The three of them rushed out of the RV when they got to their destination, where they spotted Gwen's cell on the ground and heard her frightened screams. Hero time, said Ben, summoning the desired extraterrestrial. He transformed into Stinkfly a few seconds later, flapping his wings and soaring out to save his cousin whose grip had broken. Ben had to dodge the incoming bird, but he was grateful for the rescue. In a private statement, Gwen added, I think I'm going to puke. The Stinkfly said, spew on me and you better learn to fly fast, as it kept avoiding the bird. Together, Max and Naruto recognized their issues, and Naruto decided to. After saying, I'm helping, he picked up the desired alien. He hit the face plate of his watch, and a second later he was Shitrax. He said, gotta run, and started running for the monument. Ben was headed to the monument when he saw the green light, and after Gwen nodded, he noticed a blue-black streak traveling down the walls and stated, you're going to have to trust me. He hurled Gwen when he arrived, and she let out a terrified scream before the blur grabbed her and landed her safely on the ground. Gwen thanked Naruto and nodded when he asked, you okay? Let's go get an Imo, he murmured, turning to Ben, who was standing more than them. They wished each other well before heading off to finally deal with the strange doctor. But an Imo. Kelly Reeds laughed at the last line. And here is my Verities Award, it was an honor to be nominated with a distinguished group of scientists, she stated. A green man riding a T-Rex was seen by the scientists just before a collision caused the wall to collapse. Animo jumped down and snatched the prize after delivering the prepared speech. Kelly. I do believe you have something that is mine, he exclaimed. When Animo mounted his pet dinosaur and punched his former comrade out of it, a blur stopped him from attacking. Soon later, his dinosaur was assaulted. Animo said, I want to thank the committee for this honor. The doctor sent his dinosaur to attack Naruto and Ben, because he was angry that they had come in time to stop Animo from attacking a civilian. Ben was told to redirect it by Naruto while he went to the doctor. What are you? Chitrax yelled in a scared voice, grabbing Animo by the collar. Animo was rendered unconscious by Naruto's words, you one-way ticket to defeat, before he grabbed the transmodulator from his head and smashed it with his palm, creating an energy shockwave that was 250 miles wide. Animo is currently on his way to prison after being caught by the police, shouting his retaliation at the man who had stopped him. The transformed creatures returned to their natural forms. The Tennysons planned to take a brief vacation after this outing when they departed Washington, D.C. Ben placed the broken transmodulator in the box in front of him and his cousin, while holding it in his palm. I didn't get the gold sumo slammer card, but at least I got a souvenir, added the man. Plus, I guess saving the city is its own reward, he added. Remember, you and Naruto saved me. Thanks, both of you, responded Gwen. From behind Max, Naruto whispered, no problem, Gwen, and Ben also waved her away appreciatively. She had to make herself smile as she heard Naruto whimper and caught Ben's eye. So Naruto, tell me something, Gwen replied, do you have any more inventions? And how does that bio-ninja suit work? Ben's brother had to turn around and look at a joyful Gwen before complaining and telling his family. Then he asked, ninja suit. It was going to be a long summer.